Hi guys! Welcome to my new vlog. We are here for a very special vlog. So nandito ako with this top student of mine. We are here for the wine tasting for the old world and the new world. Okay, but before we start, shoutout muna tayo. Sino gusto mag-shoutout dyan? Bumati na kayo.
Shout out, Batch 11.
Hi!
Guys.
Batch 8,
Hi, Batch
hello.
8, hello. Shoutout sa nanay kong galit.
Okay. Now, this is the first wine tasting na ginawa namin regarding for our advanced F&B services. So, interesting siya. Why? Because you will experience different wine from all over the world. The technique, the idea, and how the wine are made. Okay? So, you watch it now until the end, so you enjoy this video. So I hope you like this video. Please subscribe. At dun sa mga followers ko, maraming salamat for following this vlog. And you will learn a lot of things for this one. I hope you enjoy your video. And stay tuned for the next video. Okay? Just enjoy the fun.
Keep pushing you away while I want you to stay. I'm lacing cold as ice, but my heart still beats. When I say no, it's yes. I'm putting you to the test. Can you handle me? Do you have the key? Sorry that I've been playing games. Do you really have what it takes? I guess so, I guess so. I guess so, I guess so. I am a queen, I need my king. Are you bad enough to sin? I think so, I think so. I think so, I think so. Okay, let me just be honest with you. I want you. And okay, I've been running
So here we go. First part, and tell me if you've done that or not before, because I don't have to repeat it. But if not, we'll discuss about what is wine, the different categories, the different styles, what makes a wine different. We'll also talk about the main grape varieties. French wine region, that was for another training. I'm not sure we will do the French wine regions today, but for sure we will do a little wine tasting. Alright, so don't be scared about these grapes, actually very simple. What is wine? Wine is actually a fermented grape juice. So the most important of the wine is the fruit, it's the grapefruit. So the fruit is the most important. If you represent this little square as a grape, and I have it here on the board, this is the grape. Grape is a combination of the skin, alright, around the grape, and inside you have what we call acidity and sugar. What's important here is that on the top of the skin we have what we call the yeast, the little bacteria. When you crush your fruit, the yeast, they will start consuming the sugar, and the chemical reaction is alcohol. So you need sugar, acidity, you need yeast, and then you obtain your fermented grape juice, which is wine. Another very important category about wine is the winemaking process. So the most important again is to ensure that you have a good quality fruit, a good grape, before you start harvesting. So the first step and the most important for winemakers is to decide on the harvest date. To pick the fruit when it's just nicely ripe, not overripe and not too young. So the harvest is the most important. Second, I bring my fruit to the winery and I do the crushing. I separate the skin and the juice, and then I do what we call the fermentation. So fermentation, what I do most of the time is I leave the skin in contact with the juice for a certain period of time, up to 3 weeks, and then we have this chemical reaction, we obtain our wine. Now, after the fermentation, you have actually two options. Either you can bottle your wines right away after the fermentation. So mainly the entry-level wines that are fresh and meant to be consumed within 2 to 3 years, we do it right after the fermentation, we bottle the wine. Some of the wines that you will try today are bottled right after the fermentation, and some of them are matured in oak barrel. So the maturation will have a different impact on the wine. Do you know what is maturation? Oak aging? Have you? Yeah? So you age your wine in oak barrel, usually 225 liters, and you can have between 6 months to 48 months, depending on the style of wine that you want to achieve. A wine that is matured for a longer period in oak barrel will have a long aging potential after in the bottle. let's say a young fresh wine that I bottle right after the fermentation, within 3 years I need to consume it already. So all your entry-level wines, let's say below 1,000 pesos, below 800, are all just bottled after fermentation. If I want my wine to age for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, I need to mature it for at least 24 to 48 months. Alright? And then obviously I bottle my wine. Do you know how many styles of wines we can find? How many?
Sparkling white wine, champagne. Champagne is
Well, you know roughly. So we have about 6 different styles of wines. So if you walk into a fine dining restaurant or 5-star hotels, usually a sommelier will try to cover all these 6 different categories. The first one is the sparkling wine. I give you here 3 different examples. Champagne, Cava and Prosecco. Do we know where Champagne is coming from?
Champagne region.
Champagne region, France, yeah. Cava?
France.
No.
Italy.
Spain, very good. Prosecco?
Italy.
Italy, great. So I'm just naming those 3 because those are the very famous wine region where you can find sparkling wines. However, you can also find sparkling wine in Chile, in Argentina, in the US, and they come only under the sparkling wine category. But if you see on the label Champagne, exclusively from the Champagne region, if you see Cava, exclusively from Spain, different region of Spain, and if you see Prosecco, that's also only one region in Italy. Alright? There is also a process of making the wine a little bit different. Champagne has his own style of winemaking. We call it méthode champenoise, the method from Champagne. The difference with Cava and Prosecco is Champagne is made with 2 different fermentation. Your first fermentation to open a white wine. Once you have your white wine, you will insert inside every single bottle a mix of yeast and sugar to start a second fermentation. So Champagne is usually expensive because it takes a long time to make, because you have actually 2 different fermentation. Your first fermentation for white wine, your second fermentation inside every bottle to obtain a sparkling wine. This way of producing Champagne wine can also be used for Cava and Prosecco. They can also do that. But most of the time, Cava and Prosecco are more accessible, and they do like we do for carbohydrated drinks. They pump up some gas inside the white wine to make it bubbly. So it's faster and it's more affordable. The 3 categories are nice, but obviously Champagne has a better reputation around the world and it's more expensive. So as I said, first one, sparkling wine with the 3 main varieties. Second, white wine. Obviously made with white grape, but you can actually make white wine with red grape. Because what gives the color to the wine is actually the skin. Very good. So, third category will be the red wines. This one is very easy. It's only coming from red grape. There is no surprise here. Rosé wine. Do you know how to make rosé? Skim fermented. So they're already perfectly trained. I'm just repeating myself. Great. So rosé wine is only a short skin fermentation. Usually it's from maybe 3 to 6 hours maximum with the skin, and then you remove them and you obtain these nice pink colors. Yeah. What are the 2 more?
Fortified wine.
Fortified wine. Sweet wines. Okay.
The dessert wine.
So fortified wine, they can be both called dessert wines actually, but they tend to separate. Fortified wine, we need to add alcohol during the fermentation, because the wine will probably reach about 15% of alcohol no more. So what we do is we inject extra alcohol, neutral alcohol, to make it stronger. A good example is port, but you also have different type of fortified wine around the world. Cherry from Spain also is like that. Sweet wine. Fortified wine can also fall under the sweet wine category because they can be sweet but not necessarily. Sweet wine, you have 2 ways of making sweet wine. Over-ripening, late harvest, and the second? You don't know? Sorry? What did you say? You forgot, okay. The second is called botrytis. Botrytis. So the botrytis is actually a mushroom, a fungus that will attack the grape. Yeah? So we call it the noble rot. So you have a lot of mushrooms actually we call disease in the vineyard. Most of them are bad to the grape, so they need to treat them and they need to cure the grapes. But this botrytis happens in certain regions in the world when there is a good acidity and cold climate, good good humidity and cold climate. So it's not every year that you can get botrytis inside your vineyard. But this botrytis, what we will make, it will attack every grape and will squeeze out the acidity and only leave the sugar. And then you can do some very nice wine. A good example is in Bordeaux, Sauternes for example, very expensive sweet wine. And another one is in Hungary, it's called Tokaj. Tokaj also very famous white wine. You have in other regions, but those two most famous sweet wines will be Sauternes and Tokaj. And that's always part of the top wine list. You will always find this kind of wines. Alright, so we are perfect. Different between Old World and New World. Do we know that?
France, Spain,
Yeah.
Italy.
You have it here, everything, that's great.
Yeah.
So I don't have much to do for you. Terroir, you've heard about terroir before?
Yes, weather and
Weather and soil.
Okay. Yeah, three components. What are they? Weather, climate,
climate,
soil,
and types of the
winemaker.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Why the winemaker? Because the winemaker takes a lot of decisions down the line. It's deciding on when to harvest, on maturing the wine in oak, or just bottling after fermentation. So it's a big component also the terroir. Okay. This is a great example of terroir, for example. That's a picture that was taken in Burgundy. Burgundy is a big region that's planted only with Pinot Noir for red and only with Chardonnay for white. However, within this flat land to this first level, middle and top, you have a price point that can vary from 1 to 100. It's completely different. And even all these little plots can be planted with the same grape but still have a different expression. Alright, so every single plot in Burgundy, you have rows in the vineyard. This plot you can have maybe 10 winemakers. One has 3 rows, one has 2 rows, one has 4 rows, and they divide the vineyard. Usually in Burgundy, the middle part is what we call the Grand Cru. The best wines are usually found here because the soil is well exposed to the sun. It's very alluvial, so you don't retain any water here. So you have good natural irrigation. The top part is usually Premier Cru, high level. The flat part is usually the lower hand wine. So when you walk into Burgundy for 200 meters distance, you can really jump from a regular wine to an exceptional wine that's very expensive. So that's really the expression of terroir. As at the level of a very small piece of land, you can find a different expression in the wine. That's why collectors, they usually go for, why are the wine expensive? Because they come from smaller and smaller location. So the smaller is the plot, the smaller is the production, the more expensive is the wine. That's how it works. So Old World versus New World. Do you know why we call Old World?
You're the first one to...
Yeah, but 2,000 years of winemaking history usually we give to Old World. We found remains of about 8,000 years in Georgia, but realistically speaking, with the Roman Empire that spread the vineyards through all over Europe, you have about 2,000 years of winemaking. For New World country, it's about 400 years. So difference we say the age, 2,000 years, 400 years. The style also can be a bit different. So we give usually to a difference between cold climate wine and warm climate wines. We tend to say that Old World wine, since they are all located around Europe, it's more of a cold climate type of region. Even if in Spain it can be very hot and let's say in Germany extremely cold, we still consider as an area as a cold climate wine. Warm climate will be mostly the New World region, Australia, New Zealand, even US can be super hot. What you will give to the wine, like any single fruit, the ripeness will be different. In a warm climate, your fruit is very ripe, so you'll have more sugar than acidity, and more sugar means usually more alcohol as well. So New World wine tend to be a bit more approachable, with slightly sweeter, but also higher in alcohol. And for cold climate, it's actually the opposite. You know, lower alcohol, slightly more reserved in the palate, a bit more refined. What do we have? Main grape varieties, you know them. Do you know any other? So Chardonnay. Chardonnay is actually the most planted white wine in the world. We call them also international grape varieties because you can find them in many different countries. But let's say for wine drinkers like me or people that are sourcing wine, what we want to do is always to go to the region with indigenous grape. So we go to Italy, for example. Italy, every single region produces wines. and they have their own little indigenous variety that you can only find there, and that's for us very interesting. So Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling, those are very famous grapes and you can find them everywhere. Cabernet, Merlot, Pinot Noir and Shiraz also. Cabernet and Merlot tend to be blended together sometimes. But within the main grape varieties you have about 10,000 different species of grapes. So you can find 10,000 different varieties of grape. It's just that commonly, also for commercial reason, that's what you tend to get. So a lot of people, when you have a pouring by the glass, you always need your Cabernet, you always need your Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir is slightly lighter in color. For Chardonnay, you always have your Sauvignon Blanc, for white wine, you always have your Sauvignon Blanc, your Chardonnay. Those are the most common. In fact, I think today we will taste Sauvignon Blanc, we'll taste Chardonnay, we'll taste what? Cab Sauv and Shiraz. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have you already tried some of the wines, or is it your first time? You tried before? Okay. Do you know what do you prefer between Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc? No? Alright. So what we will do today, since you already know what I discussed before, we'll do a little tasting together. Before I serve you the wine, I'd like you to understand this process. We call them the 5S. We always do that and we'll do it together. That's the way we do as sommelier, even when we do blind tasting. Have you heard about blind tasting? When you taste the wine and you don't know what you are drinking and you try to identify. So when you become sommelier, you tend to also work a lot, make some research and taste as many wines as possible. And the goal for you to graduate from a high sommelier level is to be able to identify the wine without seeing the bottle. I've seen some very experienced sommeliers, some of the best sommeliers in the world, and they can really spot the vintage, the location, the grape. It's unbelievable. It needs a lot of training, but they all go through the same particular step. So we will do it with a glass of wine. You want to do the sparkling?
Circles all the time, but I want to